Man, do you think I got my money's worth out of that one? And all that is sanding dust. And the areas that's, some of it I have a beard, so some of it gets around the mask, but most of it gets filtered out, and my beard filters the rest. All right, here's my prototype. And many thanks to my friend Rick Wallace Knives and Outdoors and Camping and Chevy Repair, for giving me the name BC Special. That's what I'm going to call this, the BC Special. I've got it rough sanded on the belt grinder, and now it's a little bit of work with my Makita die grinder on these inner curves here, and then a whole bunch of hand sanding. So Fred, today is Thursday, and I'm back in my shop. My wife and I, we spent 3 days shopping. I'm ashamed to say we had to go from Longview, Texas, to Marshall, to Bossier, to Shreveport to get the things we needed because they were in that short of supply. And, they keep talking about meat shortage. Well, it's already happening. And the reason it's happening is because they're working everybody up on TV about it, talking about it in the news. Every radio's talking about it. Videos talking about it. I mean, you can't get away from food shortage. So naturally, what's going to happen? Same thing that happens Black Friday and Toilet Paper Tuesday. People go nuts. So we got our freezer just about filled up. We got probably another 2 shopping trips, and we'll have our backup freezer filled with meat, mostly chicken, because that's all we could find. Anyway, Fred, this is your knife. It's mirror polished. And I'll tell you what, I like the way this feels in my hand. I like that finger choil. I think they call it a finger choil. And yeah, that's going to be one of my signature knives. This is the last big knife that I'm making out of 1/8 inch. I just put a New Jersey Steel Baron order in. Spent I spent $263 on steel. And I have some brass pins coming. Solid brass. The mosaic pins, they're so expensive. I'm going to be using them less and less frequently. Only on my highest end knives that I'm, my Texas Rumble that I finish with the expensive wood and the mosaic pins. I mean, by the time I get to making the knife, I'm into it $150. And that's how expensive the components are. So anyway, let me get to hand sanding. I'm going to spend all morning hand sanding, and then I got a dinner skinner and a neck knife. I got a Cato and a Texas Rumble I'm going to cut out. And none of them are spoken for, but I'm just going to get them started. So let me get to hand sanding. I'll show you what I got when I make a little progress on it. I've been sanding on this, and it just doesn't look right. And I think I know what it is. It's too bulky up in the front of the handle. And I think from about here forward, I'm going to put it back on the belt grinder and narrow it down. I think I want to take about, I'll start here just in front of the middle pins, and I'll start narrowing it down in the front. I'll bring it in about, probably an 1/8 inch on either side. I mean, it feels good, but it really should be thinner in the front, and I'm gonna do that right now. So let me go back to the belt grinder. All right, there we go. And that's how much I brought it in. And the way you double check to make sure that it's even is if you look down the tip of this thing and you check the nose of the handles to make sure that you've removed the same amount on either side. And it appears that I've done a good job. Okay, now back to hand sanding. I like the way that's looking now. Let me share you something that I've learned on these handles. And everything I've learned by making mistakes. And here's the thing. Stop sanding on the belt grinder. Basically, just use the belt grinder to knock the edges off and get the very rough shape. Leave yourself way more handle than you want to end up with, because you have a lot of sanding to do on these, and each grit takes a little bit more off and a little bit more off and a little bit more off, and next thing you know, you got a paper thin handle, way thinner than what you wanted. And it's easy. If you come back here and you find that you do need to take a little bit more off on a belt grinder, it's better to do that after you've had a good look at it and maybe sanded some of the edges off and felt it in your hand. And there's this thing called hot spots, where when you put your knife around the handle, you can feel where it kind of digs into your hand a little bit, where it's not comfortable. And those are what you want to address. So you want to leave way more meat left on this bone than you want to end up with, because it's easier to go back and just touch it like I did. I just went back and touched it on the belt grinder on each side to thin it out in the nose. And it's easier to take just a little bit more off than to take too much off. And then on top of that, you've got multiple grades of sandpaper to go through. And each grit is going to take its own amount of handle material off. So just keep that in mind. I'm just sharing something just in case there's other new knife makers like myself out here who are learning from their mistakes. Maybe I can save you a little bit of time, or save you a handle. And by the way, this is my Chuck Ward knife vise. These are $140 shipped to your door. If you want one, contact me at bctruck@gmail.com. Okay, I'm going to flip this. Oh, there's another thing. One more thing. These pins, they're going to have grind lines in it this way. And the way I get the grind lines out is with every grade. Like right now, I'm sanding this out with a 180. And I take a sanding stick. And the first thing I do is sand the grind lines out of the pins going this way. And the reason I go this way is so I can be sure I've got these grind lines sanded out. And you want to do that first because it's going to sand a little bit of a flat in the wood. And then when you're done sanding the grind lines out of this and you go to your hand sanding, then you'll be able to sand the flats out. You can feel them with your hand, Anyway, so let me turn you over here. Let me see if I can get a close-up of the pins. So I haven't done this side yet. I've done nothing to it yet. And that's what it looks like. Those are the grind lines and the pins. And the way I do it is I take a piece of sandpaper, and I wrap it around. I just use the edge of my sanding stick, and I rub it until the vertical grind lines are gone. And then with the next grit, I rub it this way. That way you can be sure that the diagonal grind lines are gone. All right, I'm going to sand this side. I'm getting there. I've almost got it shaped the way I want it with this 180. And from this point on, all I'm doing is not removing material, but removing the scratches from the previous grit. So I'm getting there. Probably an hour or maybe two. I'll have this ready for the first coat of True Oil. This is going to get True Oil. It's not stabilized walnut. It's going to look great. I have another tip. And this is also something that I've discovered, and I would imagine that everybody has discovered this as well. But what I'm doing with these tips is just trying to help people who are like me at the discovery phase of their hobby or craft. Some may call it a craft. But when you're hand sanding, your fingers are soft and cushiony. Plus, I wear gloves. And what tends to happen if you're not careful is the pins stand proud of the wood. And by that I mean when you're sanding, you come up over the pin the pin is much, much harder than the wood, so you end up sanding more of the wood on either side, and the pin sticks out a little bit. Let me see if I can put something under here, and I'll look straight down here, and you can see on both sides where the pin is probably a 1/16 of an inch higher than in front of and behind it on both sides. And the way I counteract that is I put it back on its side, and I take my stick and I spend a good amount of time rubbing on that pin. And it may leave a little flat, but that's okay. You can get it out with your hand. But I want to fix this now before I get any further with my hand sanding, because the lower the grit you go, the longer it'll take to sand these pins down flush. And you can even feel it with your finger when you go over. You can feel it sticks up taller than the surrounding wood. I mean, not to a degree where it's sharp, but what it is it's a little hump and then back down to the wood. So I'm going to remedy that right now with my sanding stick. I can still feel it's a little bit high. Got a little bit more work. This is just one side. I got to do the other side too.